Jake Mendoza floated in the maintenance bay of Luna Station Omega, his weathered hands working methodically on the atmospheric recycling unit's pressure regulator. 23 years of keeping machinery running in the unforgiving vacuum of space had taught him that patience and precision were the difference between life and death. The station's gentle rotation provided a barely perceptible sense of gravity, just enough to keep tools from drifting away if you weren't careful. "Hand me the molecular welder, Chin," Jake called to his teammate, who was anchored nearby sorting through their equipment kit. Chin Lu, the station's electrical systems specialist, passed over the compact device. At 35, she was 15 years younger than Jake but had earned his respect through her methodical approach and steady nerves. "How's it looking in there?" "Same old story," Jake replied, his voice slightly muffled as he peered into the unit's innards. "The tertiary filter assembly is shot. Probably been running at 60% efficiency for months before anyone noticed the air getting stale in Section C." Their third team member, Dr. Rashid Okafor, the station's chief engineer, anchored himself to a nearby wall strut and consulted his tablet. "The replacement parts arrived on the supply shuttle yesterday. Should be a straightforward swap out." Jake had worked with Rashid for 8 years, ever since the Nigerian engineer had been transferred to Luna Station from the Mars orbital facility. The man had a gift for seeing the big picture while Jake focused on the nuts and bolts, literally. Together with Chen, they formed the best maintenance team the station had ever had. Luna Station Omega served as humanity's primary deep space monitoring outpost, positioned at the L5 Lagrange point between Earth and the Moon. Its massive sensor arrays tracked everything from near-Earth asteroids to the faint signals from the generation ships that had departed for Proxima Centauri. The station housed a crew of 47, but during maintenance cycles like this one, non-essential personnel were rotated to the lunar surface or back to Earth. "Jake, you might want to see this." Chen's voice carried a note of concern that made him pause his work immediately. He pulled his head out of the recycling unit and turned to where she was floating near one of the maintenance bay's viewports. Beyond the reinforced transparent aluminum, space looked different. Instead of the familiar star patterns and the pale curve of Luna, there was something else, a rippling distortion that seemed to bend light around it. "Rashid," Jake called, his engineer's instincts already sending warning signals through his mind. "Come look at this." Dr. Okafor pushed off from the wall and glided over to join them at the viewport. What they saw defied easy description. Space itself seemed to be folding. The distortion was roughly spherical, perhaps 2 kilometers across, and it pulsed with an inner light that shifted through colors that had no names. "That's not possible," Rashid whispered, his scientific training warring with the evidence of his own eyes. "Gravitational lensing effects don't work like that. The nearest black hole is light years away." Jake felt the station shudder slightly, a vibration that traveled through the deck plates and into his bones. In space, structures didn't shudder unless something was very wrong. "Chin, get on the comm to control. Tell them we need to abort the maintenance cycle and secure for—" The words died in his throat as the distortion suddenly expanded, racing outward like a soap bubble being blown up at impossible speed. In seconds it had grown large enough to engulf not just Luna Station Omega, but a significant chunk of local space. "Jake!" Shen's voice was sharp with alarm. "All our instruments just went crazy. I'm reading gravitational readings that don't make sense, and the star maps. Jake, the star maps don't match our position anymore." The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Emergency lights began flashing in the maintenance bay, bathing everything in pulsing red. Through the station's hull, they could hear the deep groaning of metal under stress. "Emergency protocols," Jake ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. 2 decades of crisis management had taught him that panic killed faster than any equipment failure. "Chen, emergency beacon. Rashid, start shutdown procedures for all non-critical systems. We need to reduce our power signature." But even as he spoke, Jake could see through the viewport that they were no longer in familiar space. The distortion had passed, leaving them somewhere else entirely. The stars were wrong, completely wrong. Instead of the familiar constellations visible from Earth-Luna space, they saw alien star patterns and something else that made Jake's breath catch in his throat. A planet hung before them, massive and blue-green, with swirling cloud patterns that reminded him of Earth but were subtly different. 2 moons orbited it, one gray and cratered like Luna, the other showing hints of atmosphere and what might be surface water. "Dear God," Rashid breathed. "Where are we?" Before anyone could answer, the station's intercom crackled to life. Commander Sarah Torres's voice cut through the static, professional but tight with strain. "All personnel, this is Command. We have experienced an unknown event resulting in our displacement from our previous position. All department heads report to the bridge immediately for emergency briefing. All maintenance teams return to stations and prepare for possible structural damage assessment." Jake was already moving, his trained responses taking over. "Chin, seal up the atmospheric unit as best you can. Rashid, grab the portable diagnostic gear. If we've been displaced as far as it looks, we're going to need every piece of functional equipment we can get." The journey through the station's corridors to the bridge normally took 5 minutes. Today it took 7, as they had to navigate around emergency bulkheads that had sealed automatically when the station's sensors detected the spatial distortion. The corridors hummed with tension. Crew members moved with the quick, efficient motions of people trying to stay busy while their minds processed an impossible situation. The bridge of Luna Station Omega had been designed for monitoring and communication rather than navigation. The station had minimal maneuvering capability, and had never been intended to travel anywhere. Now, the large screens that normally displayed Earth-Luna space showed an alien star field. Commander Torres stood at the central console, her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun that couldn't quite hide the gray streaks earned through 15 years of command. Around her, the bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to make sense of readings that defied explanation. "Jake, good. I need your assessment of our structural integrity." Torres turned to face the maintenance team. "The event, whatever it was, put stresses on the station that were never part of the design parameters. We'll need at least 6 hours for a full inspection," Jake replied. "But preliminary readings from the maintenance bay suggest the primary hull is intact. What's our situation, Commander?" Torres gestured to the main screen, where a detailed sensor readout showed their current position relative to the unknown planet. "We're in a stable orbit around what appears to be a Class M planet. Gravity, atmospheric composition, and electromagnetic readings all suggest it could support human life. We're approximately 40,000 kilometers out, close enough for detailed scans but far enough to avoid immediate gravitational complications." Dr. Elizabeth Park, the station's chief science officer, looked up from her console. "Commander, I've been analyzing the sensor data. This system is definitely not in our local galactic neighborhood. The stellar density and composition suggest we're somewhere in what would be the outer spiral arm, possibly thousands of light years from Earth." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Thousands of light years meant that even at the fastest speeds human technology could achieve, a journey home would take centuries. Luna Station Omega carried supplies for 6 months of normal operations, maybe 8 if they rationed carefully. "What about communication?" asked Chief Communications Officer David Kim. "Any chance of raising Earth or the Mars stations?" "Negative," Kim replied, his fingers dancing over his console. "I've tried every frequency, every protocol. We're not getting any response from any known human installations. Either we're too far away or—" He left the sentence hanging. Jake understood. "Or we're not just displaced in space, but in time as well." The thought was too terrifying to voice. "Options," Commander Torres said simply, her command training taking over. "I want all department heads to give me viable options for keeping this crew alive and getting us home." Dr. Park spoke first. "The planet below shows definite signs of life. Chlorophyll signatures, oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, liquid water oceans. If we can establish a foothold there, we might be able to survive indefinitely while we figure out how to get home." "Landing options?" Torres asked. Chief Pilot Maria Santos, who had been running calculations at her station, looked up grimly. The station's shuttles were designed for Luna Station to lunar surface runs. They've got enough Delta V for a one-way trip to the planet's surface, but getting back up here would require fuel we don't have. What about the station itself? Jake asked. Could we bring Omega down to a low orbit, maybe even attempt a landing? Rashid shook his head. The station was never designed for atmospheric entry. Even a controlled descent would likely result in structural failure. We'd be looking at a one-way trip with no guarantee of surviving the landing. Jake studied the sensor readings, his engineer's mind working through the problem. What if we don't land the whole station? What if we strip out essential systems and build them into the shuttles? Create a modular base we can set up on the surface? That's actually not a terrible idea, Dr. Park said slowly. We could take the fusion reactor, life support systems, communications gear. Set up a temporary base while we explore the planet and look for resources. Commander Torres was quiet for a long moment, considering the options. Finally, she spoke. Dr. Park, I want detailed scans of the planet. Atmospheric composition, weather patterns, potential landing sites. Focus on areas that show the best combination of resources and shelter. Jake, I want you to work with Chief Santos on the feasibility of modifying our shuttles for extended surface operations. Rashid, start inventorying critical systems that could be relocated. As the meeting broke up and teams scattered to their assignments, Jake felt the familiar comfort of having concrete problems to solve. The mystery of how they'd ended up here was important, but keeping 47 people alive was more immediate. Over the next 18 hours, the sensor data painted an increasingly detailed picture of the world below them. The planet, which Dr. Park had designated Kepler 442c after a similar world in their home galaxy, was roughly 20% larger than Earth, with a gravity of 1.15 g. The atmosphere was indeed oxygen-nitrogen, with trace gases that suggested active geological processes. Most encouraging were the vast forests visible in the temperate zones, and what appeared to be fresh water lakes and rivers. But it was the signs of possible intelligence that captured everyone's attention. Jake, you need to see this. Dr. Park called him over to her science station. On the screen was a high-resolution image of what appeared to be a continent-sized landmass in the planet's northern hemisphere. At first glance, it looked like pristine wilderness, vast forests, mountain ranges, and river systems. But when Jake looked closer, he could see patterns that didn't look entirely natural. Those clearings, he said, pointing to geometric shapes visible through breaks in the forest canopy. Those are too regular to be natural. That's what I thought. And look at this. Dr. Park highlighted several areas where the river system seemed to follow unnaturally straight courses. Either this planet has the most geologically regular water systems in the galaxy, or someone's been doing some large-scale engineering. The implications were staggering. If there was intelligent life on the planet below, first contact protocols became essential. But Luna Station Omega had never been intended for exploration or diplomacy. They were mechanics and technicians, not ambassadors. Have you told the commander? Jake asked. I'm briefing her in an hour. But Jake, there's something else. Dr. Park's voice dropped to a whisper. The electromagnetic readings we're getting from the planet's surface. There's definitely technology down there. Not necessarily advanced by our standards, but organized. Structured. If we go down there, we're not just landing on an uninhabited world. That evening, Jake floated in his quarters, looking out at the alien stars through his small porthole. The weight of their situation was starting to sink in. They were farther from home than any human had ever been, with no clear way back. And now they were contemplating landing on a world that might already be inhabited. A soft chime from his door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called. Chin entered, looking as tired as Jake felt. Can't sleep either? Too much to think about, Jake admitted. You! She settled into the chair across from his bunk, the station's gentle rotation providing just enough gravity to keep them oriented. I keep thinking about home. My sister was supposed to graduate from the engineering academy next month. I was going to be there. Jake nodded, understanding. They all had lives, families, futures that might now be forever out of reach. We'll figure this out, Chin. We've got good people, and we've got options. Do we? Really? She looked out the porthole at the alien planet hanging in space below them. Even if we survive landing, even if we can establish some kind of settlement, Jake, we might never see Earth again. Before Jake could respond, the station's intercom crackled to life. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. Emergency briefing. Jake and Chin exchanged glances and headed for the door. In the corridors, they joined the stream of personnel making their way to the bridge. The tension in the air was palpable. Something had changed. Commander Torres was standing at the central console when they arrived, her face grim. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Park has made a discovery that changes our situation significantly. Dr. Park took over, calling up images on the main screen. 6 hours ago, we detected an electromagnetic pulse from the planet's surface. It was brief, lasting less than 3 seconds, but it was clearly artificial. More importantly, it was directional, aimed directly at our position. Jake felt his stomach clench. They know we're here. It appears so. The signal was transmitted on a frequency that human equipment would easily detect, which suggests either coincidence or intent. Given the precision of the targeting, I'm leaning toward intent. Chief Communications Officer Kim spoke up. I've been monitoring all frequencies since the pulse. So far, nothing else. But they definitely have the capability to reach us if they want to. Commander Torres took back control of the briefing. This changes our timeline significantly. If there's intelligent life down there, and they're aware of our presence, then we need to make decisions about contact sooner rather than later. We can't assume they'll simply ignore us. What are our options for communication? Jake asked. Kim consulted his notes. We have standard first contact protocols in our database, but they were designed for planned missions, not emergency situations. We can transmit basic mathematical sequences, images, even audio if we think they can receive it. But without knowing their technology level or communication methods, it's largely guesswork. Dr. Park added. The good news is that the electromagnetic pulse suggests they have at least early radio-level technology. That gives us a baseline for communication attempts. Jake studied the sensor readings displayed on the screen. Below them was a world that might hold answers to their survival, but also potentially hostile aliens who already knew they were there. Commander, what's the timeline for the landing mission? 48 hours, Torres replied. Dr. Park has identified 3 potential landing sites that offer good resources and appear to be far enough from the technological signatures to avoid immediate contact. We'll take the modified shuttles, establish a base camp, and then decide on our next steps based on what we find. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Jake worked around the clock with Chief Santos and Rashi to modify the 3 shuttles for extended surface operations. They stripped out non-essential systems and reconfigured the cargo holds to carry critical equipment, a portable fusion reactor, atmospheric processors, communication gear, and fabrication units that could manufacture replacement parts from local materials. The most challenging modification was installing the additional life support equipment needed for an indefinite stay on the planet's surface. The shuttles had been designed for short hops between Luna Station and the lunar installations, not for potentially permanent settlement. Jake, we've got a problem, Chin called from where she was working on the number 2 shuttle's atmospheric scrubbers. The CO2 filters aren't going to last more than 2 weeks with a full crew complement. Even if the planet's atmosphere is breathable, we'll need backup systems until we can establish proper air recycling. Jake crawled under the shuttle's main console to examine the life support connections. What about cannibalization? Can we pull components from the station's systems? Maybe, Rashid said, consulting his tablet. But we'd be compromising the station's ability to support the crew remaining in orbit. That was another challenge they'd been wrestling with. Commander Torres had decided that only half the crew would make the initial landing, 24 people divided among the 3 shuttles. The remaining 23 would stay aboard Luna Station Omega to maintain the orbital platform and serve as backup in case the landing mission failed. Jake had volunteered for the landing team, along with Chan and Rashid. As the senior maintenance team, they would be essential for establishing and maintaining whatever base they managed to set up on the surface. Dr. Park would lead the science team, while Chief Santos would command the mission. "We'll make it work," Jake said finally, pulling himself out from under the console. "We've got portable atmospheric processors in storage. They were meant for emergency use if the station's main systems failed, but they'll keep us breathing until we can set up something more permanent." The final briefing took place 12 hours before departure. The entire crew gathered in the station's main assembly area, the largest open space on Luna Station Omega. Commander Torres stood at the front, her expression serious but determined. "Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow we take a step that no human crew has ever taken before. We're going to land on an alien world, not as explorers or scientists, but as refugees trying to find a way home." She paused, looking out at the faces of her crew. "I won't lie to you, this is dangerous. We don't know what we'll find down there, and we don't know if we'll be able to get back to the station once we're on the surface." She gestured to Dr. Park, who brought up images of their intended landing site on the main screen. "We'll be setting down here, approximately 200 kilometers from the nearest technological signatures Dr. Park has identified. The area shows good water resources, moderate vegetation, and minimal geological activity. Chief Santos and her team will establish a base camp while Dr. Park's science team conducts initial surveys of the local environment." Jake studied the landing site images. It looked almost Earth-like, rolling hills covered with what appeared to be forest, a river system that provided fresh water, and clear areas suitable for establishing a settlement. But appearances could be deceiving, especially on an alien world. "What's our communication schedule with the station?" asked Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the mission's xenobiologist. Chief Communications Officer Kim answered. "Every 12 hours standard check-in. If we detect any signs of intelligent life or technology, immediate contact. And if the inhabitants of this world attempt to communicate with the station while you're on the surface, we'll relay everything to the landing team." Commander Torres concluded the briefing with assignments and final preparations. As the crew dispersed, Jake found himself back at the viewport in the maintenance bay, looking down at the planet that would either be their salvation or their grave. "Second thoughts?" Chin joined him at the viewport, her reflection ghost-like in the transparent aluminum. "Always," Jake admitted. "But we don't have much choice. Stay here and slowly run out of supplies, or go down there and take our chances with whatever's waiting for us. At least it'll be an adventure," Chin said with a slight smile. "How many mechanics can say they were part of humanity's first contact with an alien species?" Jake hoped she was right about it being an adventure, and not a tragedy. Launch morning arrived with the artificial dawn of Luna Station's lighting cycle. Jake woke early and went through his pre-flight checklist one final time: personal gear secured, emergency supplies packed, tools organized. The shuttles were loaded and ready, their cargo holds crammed with everything the landing team would need to survive on an alien world. The shuttle bay was a controlled chaos of final preparations. Chief Santos moved between the three craft, checking systems and talking with her pilots. Dr. Park supervised the loading of scientific equipment, while the various team members said their goodbyes to the crew members staying behind. Jake found Commander Torres near Shuttle 2, the craft he would be riding down to the surface. "Commander, I wanted to say, if something happens down there, if we don't make it back." "You'll make it back," Torres interrupted firmly. "All of you. I don't accept any other outcome." She handed him a sealed envelope. "Orders for the landing team. To be opened only if you lose contact with the station for more than 72 hours. Jake pocketed the envelope, hoping he'd never need to open it. The launch sequence was almost anticlimactic after all the preparation. One by one, the three shuttles detached from Luna Station Omega and began their descent toward the planet's surface. Jake watched through the shuttle's small porthole as the station grew smaller above them, until it was just another star in the alien sky. The descent took 3 hours, as Chief Santos had programmed a conservative trajectory that would bring them down gradually through the planet's atmosphere. As they entered the upper atmospheric layers, Jake felt the familiar sensation of increasing gravity, and the subtle vibrations that indicated they were no longer in the pure vacuum of space. "Atmosphere looks good," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez, the pilot of their shuttle. "Oxygen-nitrogen mix, pressure within normal human tolerances. Temperature at the landing site is showing 15 degrees Celsius, comfortable for surface operations." Through the porthole, Jake watched alien clouds stream past. The sky was a familiar blue, but subtly different, perhaps a slight green tinge that suggested a different atmospheric composition. Below, the landscape was rolling green forest broken by clearings and the silver thread of rivers. 2 minutes to touchdown," Rodriguez announced. "Everyone check your harnesses." Jake felt the shuttle's engines firing in short bursts as Rodriguez made final course corrections. Through the porthole, he could see one of the other shuttles descending parallel to them, while the third was approaching from a different angle to provide triangulated coverage of their landing zone. The touchdown was surprisingly gentle, just a slight jar as the shuttle's landing gear made contact with solid ground. After months in the microgravity of Luna Station, the sensation of weight was both familiar and strange. "We're down," Rodriguez announced. "All systems green. Atmosphere is breathable, but I recommend keeping your suits sealed until Dr. Park can complete environmental analysis." Jake was already moving, checking the shuttle systems and preparing for surface operations. Through the cockpit windows, he could see alien landscape, trees that looked almost like Earth species but with leaves that showed subtle differences in color and structure. The grass was definitely not terrestrial, growing in circular patterns that created natural mandalas across the clearings. "Jake, Chen, we're setting up the perimeter," Chief Santos called from the shuttle's main hatch. "I want portable sensors at 50-meter intervals around the landing site. Rashid, start unpacking the fusion reactor. We need power before nightfall." The next few hours were a blur of activity, as the 24 members of the landing team established their base camp. The portable fusion reactor went online first, providing power for the atmospheric processors and communication equipment. A circle of prefabricated shelters was erected around the reactor, while sensor pods were deployed in a wide perimeter to provide early warning of any approaching life forms. Jake was helping Chen install a water purification unit near the stream that ran past their landing site when Dr. Park's excited voice crackled through their suit radios. "Jake, Chief Santos, you need to see this. Now." They found Dr. Park and her team about 100 meters from the base camp, standing at the edge of what Jake had initially taken for a natural clearing. Up close, it was clearly artificial. The ground had been leveled and cleared with deliberate intent, and there were geometric patterns carved into the earth that were definitely not natural. "This site was prepared," Dr. Park said, her voice tight with excitement and concern. "Someone knew we were coming and cleared a landing area for us." Jake knelt and examined the carved patterns more closely. They were intricate, showing a level of artistic sophistication that suggested intelligence at least equal to early human civilizations. But more disturbing was the fact that some of the carvings showed circular shapes that bore an uncomfortable resemblance to their shuttles. "How long ago?" Chief Santos asked. Dr. Park consulted her tricorder. "The soil disturbance patterns suggest this work was done within the last few days. Possibly as recently as yesterday." Jake straightened, his engineer's mind processing the implications. "They'd been watching us since we arrived in orbit. They prepared this landing site after they detected our presence." Before anyone could respond, Dr. Tanaka's voice came through their radios from the perimeter sensors. "Contact. We have contact approaching from the north. Multiple individuals, moving in formation." Chief Santos immediately switched to command frequency. "All teams, return to base camp immediately. Defensive positions but do not show aggressive intent. Dr. Park, get your first contact protocols ready." Jake and the others jogged back toward the shuttles, where the rest of the landing team was taking positions behind the prefabricated barriers they'd erected around the fusion reactor. Through the gap between two shelters, Jake could see movement at the tree line, figures emerging from the forest in what was clearly a deliberate, organized approach. As they got closer, Jake got his first clear look at the planet's inhabitants. They were humanoid but clearly not human. Taller and more slender than Earth humans, with skin that showed a subtle greenish tinge that might have been adaptation to their star's slightly different light spectrum. Their faces were recognizably faces, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, but the proportions were different, with larger eyes and more delicate features. What struck Jake most was their technology. They wore clothing that appeared to be woven fabric, but with patterns and textures he'd never seen before. Some carried what were clearly tools or weapons, long staves with crystalline formations at their tips that pulsed with soft light. The group stopped about 50 meters from the base camp, clearly within easy communication range but far enough away to avoid appearing threatening. One of the figures stepped forward, an individual slightly taller than the others, wearing more elaborate clothing and carrying a staff topped with a complex crystal formation that seemed to shift colors as Jake watched. Dr. Park emerged from behind the barriers, her hands empty and held out in the universal gesture of peaceful intent. "This is it," she said over the radio. "First contact." The alien leader, for that was clearly what they were dealing with, raised their staff and spoke. The sounds were unlike any human language Jake had ever heard, but they were clearly structured communication. Music-like but with definite patterns that suggested sophisticated grammar. Dr. Park responded with the standard first contact protocol, mathematical sequences that would demonstrate intelligence and peaceful intent. She held up her hands, showing fingers, then traced mathematical symbols in the air. The alien leader watched intently, then did something unexpected. They reached into their clothing and pulled out a device that looked disturbingly familiar, a rectangular screen showing images. With careful movements, they began displaying pictures. The first image showed Luna Station Omega, clearly recognizable and obviously observed from the planet's surface. The second showed the shuttles during their descent. The third showed the landing team setting up base camp. They had been watching everything. But it was the fourth image that made Jake's heart race. It showed the wormhole that had brought them here, the same spatial distortion that had transported them from Earth-Luna space to this alien system. And below it, text and symbols that were clearly writing, though unlike any human script. The alien leader spoke again, this time pointing at the image of the wormhole and then at the humans. The meaning was clear. They were asking about how the humans had arrived. Dr. Park looked back at Chief Santos, who nodded. Carefully, Dr. Park began pointing at the image and then at the shuttles, trying to communicate that they had come through the wormhole but had not created it. The alien leader conferred with their companions in their musical language, then turned back to the humans. They did something with their device, and suddenly sounds emerged from it, sounds that were unmistakably human. It was a recording of Luna Station's emergency beacon, transmitted when they had first detected the spatial distortion. The aliens had been listening to human communications from the moment they'd arrived in the system. Jake realized that first contact was going to be far more complex than anyone had anticipated. These beings had technology that could observe them from planetary distances, record their communications, and display holographic images. They were dealing with a civilization that might be more advanced than humanity in some respects. The alien leader made what appeared to be a welcoming gesture, then began walking slowly toward the base camp. Dr. Park looked back at Chief Santos, who nodded again. First contact protocols were clear: follow the alien's lead, show peaceful intent, and gather as much information as possible. As the alien delegation approached, Jake noticed details that his engineer's eye automatically catalogued. Their tools showed sophisticated manufacturing techniques. Their clothing suggested advanced textile production. Most importantly, the crystal formations on their staves were clearly technological devices, not decorative items. When the aliens reached the edge of the base camp, the leader did something that surprised everyone. They touched their throat and spoke, but this time the sounds that emerged were clearly an attempt at human speech. "WL, come," they said, the words heavily accented but recognizable. "We have waited for you." Dr. Park stepped forward, her scientific excitement barely contained. "You speak our language?" The alien leader's large eyes showed what might have been amusement. "We learn quickly. Your transmissions from the Sky Place teach us much." They gestured toward Luna Station, visible as a tiny point of light in the afternoon sky. You are far from home, yes? The void path brought you here. Jake felt his hopes rising. If these beings understood that they were displaced travelers, rather than invaders or explorers, it might mean the difference between survival and disaster. Yes, Dr. Park replied carefully. We were taken from our home system by the void path. We're trying to find a way back. The alien leader nodded, a gesture that was remarkably human-like. This we understand. You are not the first to come through the void paths. But most who come do not have the knowledge to return. Others have come through? Chief Santos stepped forward, her command training taking over. From where? The alien leader gestured for their companions to approach. As they moved closer, Jake could see that their group included individuals with different physical characteristics, some taller, some with different skin tones, some with technological devices that seemed to be integrated into their bodies rather than carried. Many worlds send travelers through the void paths, the leader explained, their human speech improving with each sentence. Some by choice, some by accident, some by necessity. This world has become a gathering place for those who journey between the stars. Dr. Park could barely contain her excitement. A gathering place? You mean there are others here? Other species? Yes. And some are like you. From the world you call Earth. Jake felt the ground shift under his feet, not literally but emotionally. Humans? There are other humans here? The alien leader's expression showed what might have been sympathy. A few. They arrived many seasons ago through a different void path. They have helped us understand your people, your ways of communication. This is how we learn to speak your words. Chief Santos stepped forward. We'd like to meet them, if possible. And we'd like to learn more about these void paths. If there's a way home. There may be, the alien leader replied. But first, you must understand this world and its ways. You must learn to live here, to contribute to the community of travelers that has developed. The journey home, if it is possible, requires resources and knowledge that take time to gather. Jake looked around at his team members, seeing the same mixture of hope and uncertainty in their faces that he felt. They had come to this world expecting to find an uninhabited planet where they could establish a survival settlement. Instead, they had discovered a complex civilization that included not only native intelligent life but other human refugees from Earth. We're willing to learn, Dr. Park said. We want to contribute. We're engineers, scientists, technicians. We have skills that might be useful. The alien leader's expression brightened, literally, as the crystalline formations on their staff pulsed with warmer light. This is good. The community always needs those who understand the making and fixing of things. Your skyplace, they gestured toward Luna Station Omega, shows advanced understanding of voidcraft construction. You can see our station? Jake asked. We see many things. Our instruments are different from yours, but effective. We have watched your people work to modify their small craft for surface use. Impressive adaptation to emergency conditions. Jake realized that their every move since arriving in the system had been observed and analyzed. These beings had a technology base that was different from human science but clearly sophisticated. The alien leader made a gesture that seemed to indicate decision. I am called SciFi in your sound patterns. I serve as speaker for the Convergence Council, the governing body for this community of travelers. If you wish, we will provide you with accommodation and assistance while you learn our ways and decide your path forward. Chief Santos looked back at her team, then at the shuttles and the makeshift base camp they had established. We appreciate your offer, SciFi. But we have people in orbit who are depending on us. We need to maintain contact with our station. This is understood, SciFi replied. The community has facilities that can assist with void-to-surface communication. Better than your current equipment, and powered by renewable sources that will not deplete your energy reserves. Jake felt a surge of hope. If they could establish reliable communication with Luna Station Omega while learning from this advanced civilization, they might actually have a chance of finding a way home. Before we make any commitments, Dr. Park said carefully, Could we speak with the other humans you mentioned? We'd like to understand their experience here. SciFi nodded. Of course. They are at the main settlement, approximately 1 day's travel from this location. We can arrange transport, or you may use your own craft if you prefer to maintain independence.